and welcome to 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking 3 powerful questions. I'm your host, Rachel Vogel, and joining me tonight is Dylan Bourne, CEO and founder of Bourne Creatives. With a successful track record and experience working for elite music management companies, major record labels, and publishers, Dylan passionately empowers artists, songwriters, and producers to establish and maintain thriving businesses through his unique 360-degree development approach. Since forming Bourne Creatives, he has signed and nurtured a growing and diverse roster of cutting-edge talent such as Dazy, producer and featured artist with Nicky Youre on the massive viral hit Sunroof, as well as rising hip-hop superstar JELEEL. And last but certainly not least, he's been featured on the Hits Daily Double's coveted music industry Noisemakers list, and he's honored to have been named a Next Gen Executive Ambassador by the Recording Academy. So, wow, what a way to get started. Some impressive accomplishments there. Dylan, thanks so much for joining me. Are you ready to jump in?
I'm super excited. I'm ready to jump in. I really appreciate you having me on here. I've been digesting this podcast, and over the recent months, and I'm just really impressed with what you're building, and really thankful that there's a platform that's, taking wisdom from a lot of really accomplished people in this business and presenting it in a very digestible way. And I think that's needed. It's hard to find places where you can get that in this business. So congrats on everything you're building.
Okay, let's get started. Imagine for a second you're sitting down with your 25-year-old self. What one piece of advice would you give him on a personal note, and what one piece of advice would you give him from a business perspective?
In some way, I think my answers are going to combine personal and business, but I would start out by just saying, relax, bro. Relax.
It's not that deep.
It's not that deep, and enjoy the process. I think when I was 25, I was in such a rush constantly to get to the next step of every phase of life. And I think that that's not the best way to live. I think every step, every, piece of your journey is meant to teach you something. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't move with urgency, but it does mean you should be more focused on soaking it all in than getting past it. I also think don't run from pain. I think for a long time in life, I, like many people, was looking to live comfortably, right? It's like looking for comfort in every situation. But the reality is that you will miss out on a lot of opportunities to grow if that's what your aim is, right? Whereas if you dive headfirst into pain, into challenges, you're going to experience growth. And it's going to shape you into a better person, both on a personal and business level, right? So that was more the answer on the personal front. On the business side, I would say kill your ego now, kill it, and also start looking into ways of training your mind to deal with the challenges you face on an everyday level. I think for a lot of years in my 20s, I wouldn't say going through the motions in that capacity, but I was just focused on just the work. I was putting in crazy hours. I think throughout most of my 20s, I was doing, roughly 70 hours of work a week. I wasn't pouring enough time into, okay, how am I growing my mind so that I can practically approach my work in a more efficient way? How do I develop better discipline? How do I develop better organizational skills, right? Because they're things that get ignored. You're just focused on how do you create the best thing possible? How do you work the most, right? I think you have to think about how are you bettering yourself? Because if you're bettering yourself, ultimately that's going to show up in your work as well. And kind of attached to all this is this idea of practicing detachment. This kind of changed my life and my career. I think what makes me great at what I do is the passion I have for it, right? But the passion can also have negative implications as well, right? Sometimes I can be so emotional about something that I'm not able to really see it as clearly as I should. And there's this former Marine by the name of Jocko who I started listening to some of his podcasts, and he talks about practicing detachment, which is really in every situation where he's facing a challenge, he tries to take a step back and have a bit more of a third person perspective on it, kind of get out of his own head, get out of his emotions, and think of it more as if one of his close friends was coming to him and being like, here's the situation I'm dealing with. What would you do with it? And he found that when he was able to look at it that way and really step away from it, he was able to make much better decisions for himself in the moment. And since, trying to, bring that into my life and apply it, I've noticed a significant difference in the way that I face challenges. I like to call them challenges versus problems, because I think through challenges you can grow, right? Problems, it's just like it's just negativity, right? When in reality, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, it's like the challenges are good. They're good for us. They shape us. They make us stronger, better, right? So getting out of the emotions, getting out of that will drastically impact the way you approach your challenges in your business, the way you handle relationships, which ultimately are, easily the most important thing in this journey that you go through in the music business. So yeah, I would sit myself down and slap myself around a little bit and tell myself those things, because they've been probably the most game changing in terms of just perspective, right? And perspective is what shapes our reality.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. It's like I've heard people refer to kind of what you're saying as like the 24 or 48-hour rule. Like you get something that you want to respond to right away, but you need to take a second. So like take 48 hours, think about it, then you have a
Yep.
clear head respond.
Yeah. I think the only regrets I've had in my career are from making emotional decisions. The only ones.
Okay, jumping right into the next question. Every industry has its dirty little secrets, and you and I both know that it is no different in the music industry. And sometimes people think that's a bad thing, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they can be good. What's one secret you would like to share with our listeners about the industry?
I think there's a couple, if
Let's
that's
go.
okay. I think the first one, more of like a stigma, I would say that people have, which is like, I feel like when I came into this business, everyone was like, you need to find this one lane and grow in it, right? You should wear one hat, and I just really don't believe in that. Like I think that especially the music business that we're in today, it's great to be able to wear multiple hats. Like you should go learn every aspect of the business. I think the first, I would say even 5 to 7 years of being in this business, you should just be focused on just soaking in information. Go work in different roles. If you feel like you're a creative person, but you also have a like marketing, like go do both, and even if you have one role, there's definitely opportunity to show value in both areas if you're at the right company. Sometimes you don't have leaders who will effectively support you in that, but the best leaders that I've been around, they just want good ideas. They just want things that are going to change the business for themselves and for their clients. So don't feel confined to being something that aligns with your resume, or this one, like just keeping going in the same direction just because you started there. Like be willing to pivot, be open, soak up information from people that work in all these different roles, and then you will become a infinitely more valuable employee, or maybe one day entrepreneur, because you will understand the totality of the business. That would be one. I think the other is people emphasize, just like I did earlier, how much relationships matter, right? And I heard over and over again, it's like you get jobs from other people putting you on to jobs. Here's the secret. Every single one of my jobs, every major position I've held came from me sending a direct cold email to a CEO. Every single one of them. I have not gotten a job in this business without me emailing a CEO. That includes the last position that I held prior to starting my own company, which I had been in the business for 10 years at that point. And you know what? I had told a ton of people that I was looking for a role, but it was me sending a thorough, thoughtful email to a CEO on how I felt like I could impact their business in a positive way that ultimately got me a job. The lesson here isn't just shoot your shot, right? But it's to do it in an extremely targeted, thoughtful way. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have to be okay with the idea of large scale rejection if you're going to work in this business and it not get to you, right? Like if that were the case, I wouldn't be in this business. When I got my first internship coming out of this, coming into this business, it was because I applied to over 300 positions. 2 of them got back to me and one of them gave me an offer. Like you don't need all of them though. That's the thing. You don't need to feel discouraged by all the no's that come your way. You just need one yes.
Last question. Throughout your career, I can only imagine you've been asked plenty of questions, whether it was for an industry conference, the media, or even a promotion. But throughout all of those interviews and all of those questions, there has to be one that you've never been asked but would have liked to. So what is that question and what would be your answer?
What's it like to run a music company from a city that isn't a music hub? Because some people may not know this, but I actually run my company from Dallas, Texas. I lived in LA for 7 years of my life, and I could not be doing what I did or what I do now had it not been for the groundwork that I laid in there and the foundation that I laid. But I've never been asked that question. And the answer is that it's worked a lot better than I thought it would. I was really nervous about moving here, but I felt, right when the pandemic hit is when I was having these feelings about starting my own business. And I really felt like God was leading us to move to Dallas. And I was like, hold up, God, like, what do you mean? Because I don't, you may know this, but Dallas is not a music hub. There's nobody there actually, that's really working on the industry side of things. And so it was really nerve-wracking. But what I learned is that if you develop great relationships, if you have good taste, and if you have vision, you can do this job from anywhere in the world. You can. And what's even funnier about it is a lot of people still don't know that I don't still live in LA. Like I'll see people out and they'll be like, let's go get breakfast next week. I'm like, bro, I don't live here. Like I'm going to be in Dallas next week. Right. So it's been interesting almost to see how seamless that's been. Cause I talked to so many colleagues who they don't really want to be in LA or New York or even Nashville or places like that anymore, but they're really nervous about making that leap. And I just always try to encourage people. It's like, do what's best for your life as a whole, not just your job, because I believe that if you follow that ultimately the rest can pan out if you're willing to do the work that it takes, right? So for me, the work that it takes, I feel like I work harder. I put in more hours. There's trade-offs in life. There's always going to be trade-offs. But for myself and my family, it felt like being here was the best thing for them. And so I did that. And, the rest has kind of fallen into place.
Well, Dylan, it's been so nice having you on the podcast. Thanks again for taking the time. And to everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Stay tuned for next week of 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking 3 powerful questions. See you next time.